In the early 1830s, America had just emerged from the Panic of 1819, a hopeful, ambitious young nation. The young republic was leaving its adolescence behind, swept up in the intoxication of rapid growth. It was acting with reckless greed. More land, more money, more wealth, more of everything. In the countryside, people were buying land. In the large states, new shops were opening, and banks were practically giving money away. It was as if no one remembered the crash from just a few years earlier, because everyone once again believed the dream would last forever. But history repeats itself. The Andrew Jackson era. The American economy was like the visible tip of an iceberg. Beneath the surface, it was far from solid. Banks were giving out loans with virtually no conditions. People were trying to create wealth with the money they borrowed. New lands were being cultivated. Cotton production was increasing, and trade volumes were rising. But behind this growth lurked a shadow: excessive speculation. In rural areas, plots of land were being sold under grand titles like the city of the future. No one cared about the real value of the land. It was as if the entire nation was dreaming the same dream. Americans believed the economy would keep expanding, that they would be born rich, but nothing lasts forever. In 1836, President Andrew Jackson made one of the most controversial decisions in U.S. history, the Specie Circular. This order stated that from that point on, federal land could only be purchased with gold or silver, not paper money. To Jackson, banks were untrustworthy. They were the new aristocracy draining the blood of the people. But the decision had far greater consequences than anyone had imagined. The gold and silver in people's pockets dwindled day by day. Banks panicked. The flow of money in the market nearly came to a halt. Just like in 1819, people were suddenly poor overnight. They couldn't shop. They couldn't pay their debts. And only a few months later, America's story of endless growth began to crumble. In March 1837, rumors began spreading through the streets of New York. Banks were closing, interest rates were soaring, cotton prices were falling. And then, one morning, everything people had feared came true. May 1837. All banks in New York went bankrupt. People rushed to withdraw their money, but their cries at the doors found no answer. Panic spread rapidly to Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and within days, nearly everything across the nation began to collapse. Banks failed, companies shut down, lands were sold off. Just as in 1819, and just as in the Great Depression that would come a century later, people lost everything overnight. America's streets fell silent. Workers lost their jobs, factories shut down, and hunger grew by the day. Farmers lost their lands, city dwellers lined up for food. Cotton prices hit rock bottom, and cotton was the heart of America. Many who had spent their lives building prosperity lost it all within days. Newspapers printed new bankruptcy headlines every day. In some states, angry crowds began stoning banks. Once the land of prosperity and freedom, America now watched its self-made dream turn into a nightmare. At that moment, a new president took office, Martin Van Buren. But the people who had elected him were filled with despair. Van Buren's government made a decision that deeply angered the public. The market would be allowed to regulate itself. This policy sparked outrage. People asked, "Has the government abandoned us to our fate?" This question echoed everywhere, whispered under every breath. Van Buren's era went down in history as hard times. The Panic of 1837 was not merely an economic collapse. It was a lesson for the American people, showing how fragile the economy and the market truly were. Faith in banks, in markets, and even in the government had been shaken. Yet in time, this shock would help rebuild the American economy on firmer ground. Railroads, industry, agriculture, all would be reborn after this crisis. But in 1837, the people felt only one thing. It was over. Historians described the Panic of 1837 as a forgotten crisis. But for those who lived through it, it was an unforgettable nightmare. The people who lost their fortunes overnight left a silent scar on America's history. Even today, some economists draw parallels between the Panic of 1837 and the Great Depression of 1929. For in both, the government repeated the same mistakes: overconfidence, uncontrolled debt, and willful blindness to reality. The Panic of 1837 taught us something. No matter how great a nation becomes, it can never overcome its own greed. Markets grow, money flows, cities rise. But once trust is broken, everything collapses, just as it did in 1837, just as it did in 1929. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to watch my video about the Great Depression, you can find it linked in the cards above. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video. Take care.